I used to believe that family, no matter how flawed, would eventually come through for you. My wife Hannah told me more than once that my parents played favorites, that they never treated me with the same affection or respect they showered on my older brother Daniel. But I always brushed it off. Families aren't perfect, I'd tell her. They've supported me in their own way. But on that Christmas Eve, sitting in my parents' living room while my two children watched their cousins unwrap a mountain of glittering presents, I finally understood what Hannah had seen all along. It was the moment my dad leaned over and said almost casually, "Ethan, I hope you understand. We couldn't really do anything for your kids this year. Times are tough." At first, I just nodded, swallowing down the sting. But before I could even form a response, Daniel's kids tore into a pile of boxes stacked taller than them. iPads, designer sneakers, a custom bike, even a PS5, each gift bigger than the last. Sophie, my brother's wife, clapped her hands theatrically and announced prices like she was hosting some kind of twisted game show. My son Noah's eyes lit up, expecting maybe a small gift to appear in his lap. Nothing. My daughter Lily fidgeted with the fraying edge of her sweater. She whispered, "Daddy, were we bad this year?" That was the first crack in my composure. "No, sweetheart," I whispered back, kissing the top of her hair. "Santa just had a busy year." Hannah's hand gripped mine tightly, her knuckles white. I didn't dare look at her because I already knew the expression she wore. Fury mixed with the same resignation she'd carried for years. My parents, Richard and Margaret, sat watching with glassy smiles, as if nothing was wrong. My dad chuckled when Daniel's boy shouted, "This is better than last year," and clapped his shoulder like Daniel had achieved something extraordinary. When Noah asked if he could try his cousin's new bike, Sophie cut in with a laugh that was all venom wrapped in honey. "Oh, sweetie, it's too delicate. Maybe when you're older." The humiliation pressed down like a weight on my chest. I could feel my pulse hammering, but I stayed silent. I had learned long ago that calling them out led to nothing but mockery. Later that night, as we packed our kids' coats and prepared to leave, Hannah finally broke the silence in the car. "I don't ever want to see them again," she whispered, her voice shaking. I stared at the road ahead, my jaw clenched. For the first time in my life, I didn't argue back. The weeks that followed gnawed at me. I tried to bury myself in work at my small tech startup, but my thoughts kept circling back to Lily's question. Were we bad this year? How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her grandparents don't love her the same way they love her cousins? I didn't want my kids growing up with that same gnawing feeling of less than. But just when I thought I'd hit my limit, my parents found a way to dig deeper. It started with a family group text. "Dad, we've decided to create a family fund this year. Everyone contributes, and it'll help us support each other in hard times." Sounded harmless enough, until the details trickled in. The fund, it turned out, was to help cover Daniel's new truck payments, Daniel's family vacation, and his kids' birthday parties. Parties we weren't even invited to. When I pushed back, shouldn't it benefit everyone? Sophie replied with a thinly veiled jab. "Well, Ethan, not everyone can contribute equally. Some of us need help more than others. You're doing fine with your little computer thing, right?" I showed the message to Hannah. She laughed bitterly. "Little computer thing. She means your company, the one you've been bleeding over for 3 years. Do they even know you signed a deal last month?" "No," I said quietly. "And they won't. Not yet." Because somewhere in the middle of all that bitterness, a new thought rooted itself in my mind. If they wanted to exclude me, to belittle me, to humiliate my kids, I'd let them. I'd let them believe I was the quiet, overlooked son. I'd keep collecting their texts, their dismissive comments, their proof of favoritism. And when the right moment came, I'd make sure they saw it all, not just my parents and Daniel, but the entire family. Over the next few months, I built 2 things simultaneously, my startup and my revenge. The company took off faster than I dreamed. A major client signed on, our numbers tripled, and by April, I had more liquidity than I ever thought I'd see at 29. At the same time, I organized everything. Screenshots of Sophie mocking Hannah, records of money funneled into Daniel's pockets, receipts from Christmas, side-by-side pictures of my kids and hand-me-downs, while their cousins wore brand-new designer coats. Each file was another brick in the wall I was building. Then, in May, I got the message that made my pulse race. Dad, big family dinner in June. We'll discuss the fund. Ethan, since you're doing well, we'll need you to make the opening contribution. A generous one, to set the tone. Perfect. The dinner was at a high-end restaurant downtown. My parents had gone all out, inviting cousins, aunts, uncles, anyone with the last name Cole. More than 20 people gathered at the long mahogany table, sipping wine while waiters circled. I sat quietly beside Hannah, folder in my bag, listening as my dad stood to make a speech. Family is everything, he boomed. And tonight, we celebrate unity. We've created a fund to ensure none of us ever go without. Ethan will start us off with his contribution. A generous one, right, son? All eyes turned to me. Daniel leaned back in his chair, smirking like a king. Sophie twirled her wine glass, adding, "It's about time you stepped up for the family, Ethan." I rose slowly, feeling every eye on me. "You're right, Dad," I began calmly. "Family is everything, which is why transparency matters. Let's make sure everyone here understands what this fund has really been about." I pulled the folder from my bag and laid it on the table. Pages spilled out, screenshots, receipts, photos. I started with Christmas. Photos of my kids sitting empty-handed while their cousins opened iPads. Then the group texts, Sophie mocking Hannah, Dad excusing favoritism as necessity. Then the fund breakdown, showing every dollar funneled to Daniel. Gasps echoed around the table. An aunt muttered, "My God." Daniel's smirk faltered. Sophie went pale. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I narrated each piece of evidence with surgical precision, letting silence hang after each revelation. When I finished, I looked directly at my parents. "You told me times were hard, that you couldn't afford gifts for my kids. Meanwhile, you handed Daniel everything on a silver platter. And you expect me to bankroll this circus?" No, I let that sink in before adding the final blow. "The truth is, I don't need your fund. My company just closed a deal worth more than every loan you've ever funneled to Daniel combined. I came here tonight not to contribute, but to show everyone here what you've really been doing." I gathered the folder, tucked it back into my bag, and turned to Hannah. "Let's go." The room erupted behind us. Voices shouting, chairs scraping. I didn't look back. Outside, the night air was cool against my face. Hannah slipped her hand into mine. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said, exhaling slowly. "We did it. And now, finally, they can't touch us." For the first time in years, I felt light. Not because I'd exposed them, but because I'd freed my kids from ever thinking they weren't good enough. Revenge wasn't the end. It was just the beginning.